is saying I think that brand is very important, but again, it's sort of how you use that, and brand recognition isn't everything. It's what you do with your brand. It's important.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think it's what you do with your brand. You know, there's kind of this push and pull here between you want to establish credibility, but at the same time you want to be at kind of the bleeding edge of what's happening next, right? And so the idea is that if your programs are innovative and you really have something new and different, especially today, that you can associate your brand with words like innovation and everything, all these other pop words that have become very important these days. But at the same time, you need to kind of back up and you need to affiliate with highly credible partners who are sometimes a little slower to move. And it's that kind of push and pull that I've had to grapple with. You know, when we developed the Google Lunar X Prize, right? Google, one of the largest brands in the world, this is a $30 billion prize for soft landing a rover on the moon, right? The first thing that we did is we went to MIT and we established a center there to study prize-induced innovation at the Sloan School of Management and the Harvard-MIT Health Sciences and Technology collaboration. So I think you know, as you're figuring out what you want to do, I would say please kind of push to the limit of what's kind of new and innovative and leverage and try to get out and do something different, but at the same time reach back and always anchor your brand with other partners that have the credibility and that have kind of long-term sustainability and that have been there and kind of seen the landscape change over time. That helps?
Absolutely. You know, Noah touched upon something that I think is a very important point, which is that a lot of organizations here are building their boards. Just show of hands. Who's building a board in the room? And one of the key mistakes that we see, me personally, Noah, is that a lot of the organizations here are saying, well, come on my board, give to me, what are you going to do for us? And you really have to turn that on its head. And Noah's absolutely right that you have to look at it and say, what can we do for the board member when they come on the board? And it sounds weird because you're saying, wait a second, we're a charity. We're doing good. And you're supposed to help us. But you actually have to rethink that and say, what can I do? How can I make this a great experience for the board member? How can I make it a positive thing for them? And as you begin to do that, weirdly enough, as you give to the board members, and a lot of these board members are people that are very successful in the community, but they are missing something in their life. And this sort of pro bono experience is something that's very valuable for them. But you've got to turn it into something where they get a lot from you. And you think about that strategically and psychologically, and you say to yourself, what are we going to do that's going to really enrich their experience in their life? Rather than saying, hey, go out and call your 10 best friends and try to get them to donate 100 grand. That's not a really interesting experience for anybody if you do that. So you have to think about the board members differently than you do. And when you're growing your boards, and this is a really important point, you have to have thought through how you're going to attract people. Because without a board, the things that Jason, Noah, and Jane are talking about, which are strategic things, brand is a strategic concept. Whether it's developing partnerships, these are strategic concepts. Your board is your advisory team. They're your strategic team. If you don't build the right type of board with energy, insight, passion, integrity, commitment, and discipline, you're never, ever going to be able to do what you really want to do. So really, one of the reasons why I want to have people like this in front of you is because these people are doing major things in the philanthropy world. And the reason why they're able to do that is because they have strategic insight. The beautiful thing about the board, besides having to give something to them, is they're what? Anybody know?
Contacts.
They're free. Free. Okay? You don't have to pay them to be on your board. The whole point of this is they're voluntary. So many charities lack the recognition of all the unleveraged assets out in the world. Board members are free. And that's really important for you guys to recognize that your board is absolutely crucial in terms of how your organization is going to develop and where it's going to go in the future. Anybody ever walked into a board meeting and sorry to use the word, but been bored?
Oh, yeah.
How are you running your meetings?
Yeah.
Are the meetings 3 hours long? Are you making them succinct, to the point, exciting, invigorating? Are you uplifting the people when they're in there? You've got to think about all these things. What's on the agenda? Have you even thought about your agenda? Or you just put the same old things on every day? These are the things that actually impact organizations. So I really want you guys to think about that as they're talking more about in the context of the board. But I also want to circle back to, which is really the topic of this event, which is kind of a very broad-reaching question, but how do you create innovation? I guess that's really the big question, and I know each of you have a thought about it. So,
I'm glad you circled back, because I was going to see if I can comment on what Jason said. It's for someone in the nonprofit world and working in nonprofit as staff, innovation is something we hear a lot of our board members, our stakeholders saying, you know, we want you to be innovative. We want to work with organizations that are thinking outside of the box. But being innovative is taking a risk. And so the scariest part as a nonprofit organization in this type of economy is, well, I have so much, and you probably lost about 25 to 30% of what you had 2 years ago. So the idea of taking risk becomes even scarier, especially now, because if you take the risk in such a turbulent economic time, you know, what's the reward, and what kind of security do I have in whatever risk it is I'm going to take. So when Kent, you're talking about building boards, you know, not only are you recruiting for talent, but if you decide as the executive director or the CEO or a leader in a nonprofit organization, what risks you're going to take. You know, I highly recommend everyone with your board to take your board retreat and to do a very creative, innovative session where you throw out all the craziest ideas you can think of, and then you start to converge down to those that are most realistic. And then when you look at throughout the year of recruiting for board members, you know, look at all of the best sort of closing moments that you have as an organization. For us, it's a big awards luncheon. It's also some of my educational programs. For many of you, it's if you serve you know, inner city youth, it's getting those potential donors or potential board members to that school to see what happens with these kids. It's you know, it's that heartstring that you pull on. But I look at, just from our organization standpoint, what risks we're willing to take within the year, and I'll sit down with my board president and say, okay, we've got these opportunities, let's go after these 2 or 3 real opportunities. They're risky, but you know, we can mitigate the risk by getting someone who is in this sector or has this type of background, and then we can identify those people, and we look out a year in advance, and then we look at the opportunities we have throughout the year to engage them emotionally. I mean, I don't have dying children, I don't have a disease that we're trying to raise money for, we're not trying to cure cancer, you know, we're not saving lives. So it's even more challenging